Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday. This week we take a look at Rogue State, developed by Little Red Dog Games and published by Black Shell Media, who were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. Rogue State is more sim than RPG, but you know what? Fuck it. I've covered enough sims before, and it's interesting enough of a concept that I really had to play it. I'd actually been looking forward to this beforehand. In Rogue State, you play as the newly appointed head of the interim government of some fictional Middle Eastern nation, fresh off from a revolution. You are saddled with a devastated nation in need of rebuilding, a mixture of fundamentalists, capitalists, liberals, and patriots, a corrupt family member, and some hostile neighbors. Your goal is to rebuild your nation and lead it to glory, or at least not to be deposed in a messy coup. The first thing I noticed when I fired this up was, whoa, a lyrical title screen. You don't see that often in games. Usually they do not have lyrics at all. Kind of reminded me of the song from the Guild of Dungeoneers title screen, which is amusing in general. The music throughout the rest of the game is interesting. It's not great, but it is suitable for the game itself, and it lends a lot to the feel of it. The graphics are more than adequate for the game and vary depending on the various modes of play, and there are several modes of play throughout. During the course of the game, you build up money in your treasury and the loyalty of your parliament, and you must watch the loyalty of the four main factions, including a separatist sub-faction that kind of heads up under the fundamentalists. You can set policies which have an impact on your income and your country's stability, but also on the various factions' attitude towards you over time. You can attend to projects which, in the beginning of the game, simply consists of rebuilding your infrastructure, but later on can consist of everything from deciding what sorts of an education to allow your people, to environmental projects and trade projects, to particular intelligence expenditures, and so on. There is also a military project selection, which lets you build up forces, deploy them, and undertake special projects, including space programs, espionage, weapons of mass destruction, and so forth. This part of the game looks as fascinating as the rest, but I honestly didn't get into it because I was so focused on the economic side during my playthrough, I just never got a chance to building up my military. I suppose my natural political tendencies kicked in on that as I tried to steer my people towards a peaceful coexistence with their neighbors through trade, capitalism, and freedom. The simulation part of the game has things hard enough to balance as it is. Each turn you can only do a certain number of activities, and each turn is equivalent to about a month out of your 5-year term. Between each turn, an event can happen. These can be of varying natures, usually requiring a trade-off between the priorities of the different factions. Some events are all good. Most events are not, however. They usually have downsides. Some events are, in fact, all bad all the way around and really suck. Some events, like the flu epidemic crisis that ended my particular playthrough, are absolutely devastating and need to be dealt with ASAP or they will wreck your shit and in fact end the game. It does make it quite interesting and quite unpredictable. It's almost like a roguelike in and of itself, simply from the event's point of view. There are a number of other little tweaks in the game, or little activities in the game. For instance, your cabinet can give you bonuses to certain aspects of your country's development when you appoint them, and if you keep them in high regard amongst your citizens, that can only increase. Occasionally, they will set tasks out which, if you reach, will give you one-time boons, and these boons generally are either a lump sum of cash or influence amongst a particular faction. They can be absolutely critical to pull you out of the fire if you use them wisely. I did not use them wisely at first, and I suspected when I play this through again, and I will play it through again, that I'll probably be looking out more for the future than I was. If you manage to max out your overall loyalty base at 100, additional loyalty is accumulated and banked over time. And you can use it to trigger certain beneficial events. to mitigate poor support amongst factions both internal and external to your country. And indeed, external factions are important as well. There's an entire diplomacy section where you can chat with the leaders of your 3 neighboring states or the United States itself, set up trade, engage in war, etc., etc. And while I didn't use this section to the best of its abilities during my playthrough, I do think it's quite interesting, and I suspect now that I know a lot of the options are there, in future playthroughs I'll make way more use of it. It's got a balance between being able to, be easily understood and being realistic, and I think it strikes that balance rather well for the tone of the game in general. This game is quite fun, and I intend to put quite a few more hours in it myself. It may not be a role-playing game in the strictest sense, in that the only role you play is that of the Supreme Leader, but it is quite well put together for an economics and strategic simulation. It's got a sense of humor that you really only need to open the newspaper up to see, and it's got all sorts of amusing tidbits through it. Make no mistake, there is some political commentary in it. It's not quite as over your head as it could be, and I appreciate that. And it is well balanced. It is not leaning strongly towards one side or the other, and I found that quite thoughtful. It does help to highlight just how precarious some of the positions of these newly minted leaders can be, especially in unstable parts of the world. It almost makes you feel sorry for them, because if they don't appease the radicals sometimes, their own life might be on the line. If you're into this sort of thing, it's just $12.99 on Steam right now. At that price, I do recommend it, and at least from my point of view, I think it would be well worth it. Whether you want to be a benevolent dictator, a power-hungry warmonger, or a peaceful trader, it should keep you entertained for a fair amount of time. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video enough to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.